nation, and let's go to Italy and Patrizia Nava. Hello, Patrizia.
Hello, thank you, Christos, for having me.
Thank you very much for your presence here. So let me open your PowerPoint, and you have your time to present what we are going to speak in more depth in September 2023.
Certainly. Now I'm speaking of success in the chart according to W.Lilly, just some hints. In the introduction to the reader of the Almanac, England's Prophetical Merlin of 1644, so almost 3 years before the publication of Christian Astrology, W.Lilly declares his plans for the future, writing, "I intend, God willing, the Sun and Saturn 1647 not impeding, to enlarge their yew and fit him with examples of all kinds, and to make some pieces of Ptolemy speak English." Well, I think that this statement is interesting for several reasons. First of all, because of the mention of Claude Darieux, a French astrologer of the previous century, who was specialized in horary astrology and decambitures because he was a practicing doctor, as a source for Lilly's work. Then the mention of Ptolemy, the recognition of his seminal role in astrology, and then the mention of the date 1647. 1647 will be the actual real date of publication of Christian astrology. So the mention of that date, together with some astrological consideration about the Sun and Saturn, means probably that date was the result of an astrological election. So we can say that old, ancient, traditional techniques and traditional forms of astrology are present in Lilly's work and have a great place, especially Ptolemy's work, of course, but interrogations, first of all, the decambiture, like in Darieux, and even electional astrology. But the real purpose, the real aim of Christian astrology is educational, I would say. So Lilly wants to teach astrology in a new way, in English, even to those who are not able to read Latin, to those who have not any kind of academic education. He wants to write a sort of bestseller for a wide public, an astrological handbook easily comprehensible by anyone. And since his purpose is educational, we can expect very short lists of items and schemes, very clear schemes about the significators to be considered while examining a certain argument, like, for example, the testimonies of success in the chapters dedicated to the 10th house. And this is the list we find, in fact, at the very beginning of those chapters. The first point, Lilly writes, is that honor, preferment, dignity, and estimation is principally required from the luminaries, wherein the sun is most considered, and from the planets, which, within the mediety of their orbs, do behold the lights, especially the sun. In modern terms, this means that the luminaries, and especially the sun, are always to be considered and examined, together with all the planets that are in aspect with them. Then we have the Lord of the mid-heaven, the 10th house, the planet or planets constituted in the mid-heaven, that means present in the 10th house, and then from the fixed regal stars of the first or second magnitude posited near the cusp of the 10th or first house. Now, the first 3 points are referred to planetary significators. So the planets are able to give us a first brief, sometimes cursory information about the potential for success of the native according to their degree of dignity, essential dignity and accidental strength as well. So, if the luminaries, the lord of the 10th house, the planets present in the 10th house have great essential dignity, major one, by domicile or exaltation at least, or if they are in mutual reception, a major mutual reception by domicile or exaltation, then the lucky owner of that nativity could, as Lilly writes, aspire to honors, offices of public trust, great commands, exceeding favor, and good esteem among great persons. If the essential dignities are of a mediocre level, even the facts will be mediocre, down to depriving the native of any possibility of promotion or advancement when they are in serious debility. And equally, accidental strength, that is judged by Lilly mainly through the house where the planets are placed, but not only by that, will give a degree of success that is connected, that is related to the fact that the planets are in angular houses or succedent houses down to cadent houses. As for the fourth point, that is referred instead to the fixed stars. The fixed stars are able to give great gifts, to confer honor and fame, exceptional success, provided they are regal stars, quite bright, first or second magnitude, and not too far from the ecliptic. Well, the stars that are explicitly mentioned by Lilly in this context are the ones you can see here. Oculus Tauri, that is Aldebaran, in tropical Gemini, Hercules, that is Pollux, in tropical Cancer, Corleonis, Regulus, once it was in tropical Leo, now at the first degree of Virgo, Spica Virginis in Libra, Lucida Lancis in Scorpio. Well, there are two Lucida Lancis, Australis and Borealis, and Lilly doesn't tell us which one of the two is speaking of, but he mentions the longitude that in the 17th century was about 9 degrees and 45 Scorpio, so we can deduce that the star he's speaking of is Lucida Lancis Australis, in this case, Alpha Librae, the one on the ecliptic, Luben e Genubi, and then Cor Scorpii, Antares in tropical Sagittarius. However, many more stars will be mentioned by Lilly in the following chapters, in the example of nativity, the famous nativity of the English merchant. I find particularly interesting the fact that Lilly says that the stars have crucial importance when we speak of fame and honor. And he writes that in collecting the testimonies of honor, the judicious, the good judging, so good astrologers, allow for such a conjunction 3 testimonies. Clearly, when we speak of eminence, fame, glory, the power of the fixed stars is so great to exceed up to 3 times the power of the planets. And in fact, Lilly reports some ancient aphorisms concerning the fixed stars, and the first says that fixed stars give great gifts and elevate even from poverty to an extreme height of fortune, while the 7 planets do not so, are not able to do the same. but the primacy of fixed stars as indicators of success should not overshadow the importance of examining the whole nativity. Because it is true that the fixed stars in angles, writes Lilly, give admirable preferment. But if the planets do not together with that support it, usually it ends in calamity. These are ancient aphorisms we can find, in fact, in all ancient books, medieval books. They are present in the Centiloquium, in Bonatti as well, among Lilly's favorite sources. But we shouldn't think that Lilly's method, while mentioning these aphorisms, is aphoristical only or dogmatic. Quite the reverse. Lilly devotes 5 chapters to the exam of all the conditions and configurations that predict success in the horary chart in the second book, and 5 other chapters to an exam of all the same conditions that are present in the nativity in the third book. So 10 chapters are devoted to this topic. So he analyzes every variable in a series of personal statements, not only traditional aphorisms. He is not inclined to use aphorisms in a dogmatic way. His approach takes always into account the general situation, the character of the person involved, his social status, and so on, in a continuous confrontation with what I would like to call, borrowing the term from psychology, the reality principle. I mean, not everything is possible in the life of everyone. Thus, he writes, many are the aphorisms which antiquity has delivered to us concerning judgment appertaining to the 10th house. A few thereof I shall deliver, desiring the astrologer not to delude himself by delivering a positive judgment upon a single aphorism. For a beggar's child may have a nativity equal with a king's, but then they are not both the sons of kings. Therefore, when an exceedingly favorable primary direction hits exact in both charts, the chart of the beggar's child and the chart of the king's child, while the prince will obtain immense honors thanks to that influence, the young and lucky beggar will simply come to a condition of life less sordid than before. Whereas the king has immense riches allotted to him by parliament, by his people to finance his glorious enterprises, the beggar will receive money himself, but probably will receive unusually bountiful alms from some generous people, not more. And while the king gets the command of an army to conquer an empire, the beggar will become a leader himself, but perhaps the leader of a gang of pickpockets or something like that. The same principles, in effect, apply to the horary chart as well, with an important difference in the choice of significators. While in the nativity, an important role is played by the fixed stars, by the luminaries, even by the so-called lord of activity or profession that, according to Ptolemy and to Lilly as well, is either Mars or Mercury or Venus. In the horary chart, instead, the basic template is simpler and sorry, I was looking at the chart, sorry, is simpler and sees the Lord of the Ascendant representing the querent and the Lord of the MC representing honors and success. I have chosen the most straightforward among the chart presented by Lilly in the chapters dedicated to the 10th house of success. It is this one, and it is a curious chart because Lilly presents it twice. The first time for a question, a political question, about the progress of the war, if His Majesty should procure forces out of Ireland to harm the Parliament. But after only 4 or 5 minutes, a client came in propounding his own question, if I attain the preferment, that is the promotion desired. Oddly enough, Lilly doesn't tell us anything about the querent of the first political question, and this is unusual in Christian astrology, where we have, generally speaking, at least some information about the querent, if not the name, of course. In this case, there is nothing. So an hypothesis is that the person could be Lilly's patron, an important politician of the parliamentary side. But I think that the very short time lapse between the two questions, only 5 minutes at most, suggests that the querent could have been Lilly himself. We imagine him totally absorbed in the calculations to answer his own political question about the progress of the civil war when he was interrupted suddenly by a client, a real client, asking for his services. So the chart remains the same, writes Lilly. I will say almost the same, because there is a small difference in the degree of the ascendant and MC, just 1 degree anyway. Well, the two main significators, as we said before, are in this case Venus and the Moon, because Venus is the lord of the ascendant, representing the querent, while the Moon is the lord of the mid-heaven, representing the preferment or promotion or position desired. Well, Venus is only peregrine, without real essential dignity, but at least she is in her house of joy, the 5th. But the Moon is very, very strong in this chart. The Moon is in her domicile and phase in Cancer, and in an angular house that is very strong, and in the 10th house that, in this case, represents the preferment desired, success in the question. So Lilly writes that the presence of the Moon in that house is already a small, partial testimony in favor of success. Another partial testimony is the presence of the North Node at the ascendant, the North Node which elevates and increases. But this is not enough, because attaining a preferment, so obtaining a promotion, a position, is, after all, an event. And like all the events of this kind, this needs the perfection of an applying aspect, ideally between the two main significators, Moon and Venus. But this is impossible in this chart, because Venus and the Moon are in signs that don't see nor observe each other, so no possible aspect between them. But there is another aspect. The Moon is going to complete a trine to Saturn without prohibition and without obstacles. And what is Saturn in this chart? Well, Saturn is, first of all, the lord of Venus, the dispositor of Venus, because Venus is in Aquarius. Then Saturn is in mutual reception with Venus, because Saturn is in Pisces, exaltation of Venus, and Venus is in Aquarius, the sign or domicile of Saturn. Then Saturn is also dispositor of the part of fortune. So Saturn represents fortune itself in this chart. Not only, Saturn has huge dignity in the degree of the ascendant by exaltation, triplicity, and terms. So Saturn is to be considered the almuten of the degree of the ascendant. So the best possible substitute for Venus. And Venus is the querent. So the trine that is completing without obstacles between the moon and Saturn as substitute of Venus means achievement, means success. It means that the attainment of the preferment desired. Well, Lilly, after this, sees that the Sun, that is the lord of the 11th house of friends and assistance, is in the 7th house, conjunct the south node and opposing the ascendant. From all this, he guesses that this querent, in order to obtain the position, had asked a friend for help and to give him a leg up. The person is perfectly able to do this because the Sun is exalted in Aries. But in this case, he proves a false friend because of the connection with the South Node. So the Sun, the person in question, the false friend, instead of helping the querent, opposes his ambitions. In fact, the Sun is opposing the ascendant, and the Sun is also in the sign of detriment of Venus. So he's probably envious of Venus. He wants to damage the querent. Lilly, who loves surprising his clients, describing the physical appearance of people involved who has never seen in his life, only by means of the features he sees in the chart, tells the client that this man has a scar on his face because the Sun is in Aries, and Aries represents that part of the body, the face, and also that he has dark hair because the Sun is afflicted and symbolically darkened by the South Node. So the client, the querent, recognizes the description of this false friend, and thanks to the master's advice, he will obtain the preferment desired in spite of the obstacles put by the friend who wanted to obstacle him instead of helping him. And all this within 3 weeks. Why 3? Because the moon must run 3 degrees in order to complete the trine to Saturn. I conclude by saying that as Lilly says that the fixed stars are so important as indicators of success, we should expect him to mention at least the fact that the star Sirius, that is after all the brightest star of our northern sky, is culminating at the MC at the very moment of the question. But he doesn't say anything There is a reason for this, and the reason is philosophical, I would say, and it is the same reason why he, on the contrary, makes an intensive and extensive use of fixed stars in the analysis of nativities. But this is another story, and there is no more time to speak of that, and I hope we will have occasion to speak of this in the future, perhaps. Thank you
Thank you
for
very much. It was a great presentation. Thank you really very much for all this information. Rome is pretty close to Athens, so I'm pretty sure that I'm going to see you next September. Are you in Rome? I don't remember. I think you are a little north.
Yes, I'm not. I'm in Modena. Modena is
Yeah, you're
my
Modena.
city. Yes.
But it's still close. So I'm very happy to see you next September in Athens in the conference. Thank you again very much for your time. And we will be in contact for upgrades in information about the upcoming conference.
Thank you, Christos,
Bye
and thank
bye.
you, everybody.